one of the hardest parts of interviewing today is you being expected to know what problem the team is trying to solve by hiring this role. Okay. You have a job description, you have a LinkedIn profile, you have a website, you've done a little bit of research, but you really don't know the dynamics as to what they're trying to solve by hiring this role. Okay. So let me tell you something I've heard a hiring manager say after an interview that was eye-opening for me. I don't care if they know Kubernetes. I just need to know he won't panic the first time something breaks. And I thought, that's interesting. Okay. So after 25 years of taking in all of this information and conversations like this thousands of times, that's exactly what I'm here to show you today, how they think. Okay. So just think about that for a second. The candidate is not being evaluated on just knowing Kubernetes per se. The hiring manager was evaluating something completely different. And that's what today's video is all about. Okay. The technical question may not be the real question. So I'm going to provide you with a couple of examples of how this could play out and how you can really ace the interview if you follow this. So stay with me to the end of the interview. I have some great examples. Okay, so great engineers, I found that they prescribe. Okay, they diagnose before they prescribe, excuse me. So let me give you an example of an interview question that might come up that will help you. Okay, so they would ask, our checkout page is slow. How would you fix it? An average candidate might say something like this, well, I might add more servers. Okay, not a bad answer. A strong engineer might answer it this way. Well, before I answer that question, I want to understand the problem. Is it slow compared to when? Is it affecting all users or just some? What does monitoring show? Is it the database, the application, the network? See the difference? One jumps to a solution without having the full picture. The other starts with an understanding. Great engineers don't start with answers. They start with a diagnosis. Okay. So let me give you an example. We'll stay on that Kubernetes theme. Have you worked with Kubernetes? Average candidate? No. Conversation is therefore over when it comes to that. They check it off their list. That's a no. That's not good. And a stronger candidate might come back with something like this. Before I answer that question, can I ask a couple of questions to better understand how Kubernetes might be being used in your environment and the challenges that you're trying to solve? Then he pauses and then asks the questions. Now that changes the conversation completely. They're not avoiding the question, they're approaching it in the same way that approach any production issue. They're diagnosing. So maybe the challenge is scalability, deployment consistency, high availability, container orchestration. Now they're talking about the problem. Then they ask, can I ask a couple of defining questions to better understand how Kubernetes is being used in your environment? The interviewer says, sure. Now here we go. The diagnosis is starting. Questions like, is Kubernetes primarily being used for scalability, deployment consistency, high availability? Do you see where I'm going with this? Now the interviewer is talking to them and they're giving more information about what they're experiencing there. So every answer that you get from them is insider knowledge because you're no longer learning about Kubernetes, you're learning about their pain points. You're learning about what keeps them up at night. And now you can answer the problem accordingly. Not just answering a tech question, you're answering, you're giving them the answer to their problem. So this is what they're really evaluating. Here's the mistakes that many candidates might make. They assume that every technical question is a knowledge test. And sometimes it is, okay? Let's be clear on that because if you're interviewing for a senior Kubernetes architect role and you've never touched Kubernetes, well, you know that's going to be a problem. You can't talk your way around that. But many interviewers are running a completely different evaluation. They're asking this, listen up. How do you think? How do you learn? How do you diagnose a problem? How do you communicate your reasoning? How do you handle uncertainty? I had a candidate once who got a system design question terribly wrong. But she said, here's my reasoning, and here's what I would want to evaluate before committing to a response. she got an offer because the engineer who answered it correctly didn't. Why? Because the interviewer wasn't just evaluating technical knowledge. You can memorize stuff. Somebody with a really great memory can go in there, expect that they're going to ask a lot of, say, for example, Kubernetes questions and memorize them. She showed them something better, something deeper, how she evaluates problems. And that's why she was the one that got the answer. And that's often the real test, how you would figure this out. So the next time you're asked a technical question you don't know, remember this: the interviewer may not be evaluating that, whether you know the answer or not. They may be evaluating how you respond when you don't know. Great engineers diagnose problems, and average candidates answer questions. And the candidates who understand what is really being evaluated often have a huge advantage over those who think the interview is a simple knowledge test. Because again, you can memorize questions, but then when you're in a situation, you're not going to react as good as somebody that really has those diagnostic skills. So remember, the technical question isn't always the real question. If you're tired of guessing what they could possibly want and what they're actually looking for, subscribe. I bring you this insider knowledge every single day and week. And every time I take you inside the hiring process, I'll show you what most candidates never get to see. Hope this helps. Good luck to you, and happy job hunting.